Okay, well, as you can see behind me, we've kind of changed the title of the series, but the series is pretty much the same. Hey, David, I didn't even see you hiding out there. Hi, buddy. Uh, but we're still in the overall life of Jesus aspect of things, but we have been driving to a particular point that we've talked about that's going to be part of our Advent season, and that we are driving into through Jesus' personal ministry, through his birth, through when he was 12 years old, really asking ourselves some questions and letting the Spirit move on. Are we ready to fulfill our righteousness? Are we all in? Because there's going to be a point where he calls the disciples to start moving forward, and the assumption is there, as we explained before, that you are all in once you get to that point. This is that point. This is when we start switching over to the discipleship model, and him calling his first disciples to him, which in turn in our study is going to be him calling us. And we're going to look at that, what that looks like outside of just what our day-to-day norm is. Because I know a lot of us have accepted Jesus as leading, forgiven the lives, and consider themselves followers of Jesus. I know a lot of us call ourselves Christian, and those type of things. But what does it look like on that extreme Jesus end of things? And are we willing to make those steps? So we're going to dive back into it. We're going to Luke chapter 5 as we move into this particular part when we're talking about our calling and what our calling is within Jesus' ministry. So if you want to turn there, Luke chapter 5, we're going to start on verse 1. Again, the Bible, YouVersion's up and running, those Bibles around the rooms if you need those. But we have just finished going through that section about Jesus kind of showing us those 4 steps of finding his will and being all in and how to find what he's calling us to do. And now we're going to start putting some action into that together. So we'll do what we usually do. We're going to read a little and talk a little. We're going to start in verse 1 and see where it takes us. It says, on one occasion, while the crowd was pressing in on him, Jesus, to hear the word of God, he was standing by the lake of Gennesaret. JT, is that anywhere close to right?
I'm sorry, what?
Never mind. Gennesaret. And he saw 2 boats by the lake, but the fishermen had gone out of them and were washing their nets. Getting into one of the boats, which was Simon's, he asked him to put out a little from the land. And he sat down and he taught people from the boat. Now, in this particular section, there's going to be there's some interesting tidbits that we want to pick up on. There's some nautical terms that you may or may not pick up on. I know I picked up on one, but not the other. Again, this lake, Genesis, I'm just going to call it the Sea of Galilee, because that's what everybody else called it. It was the fishermen that called it this, that called it the lake, those that would travel. And then there's that other section. I don't know, it sounded a little odd to me, but I didn't really put a lot of thought. But Jesus asked him to put out instead of can you cast out or can you go out 5 feet or something. Put out is actually a nautical term as well. And it's interesting when we look at Luke, he uses a lot of medical terms, which makes sense because he's a doctor. It just kind of goes in there, and we have to kind of look a little bit deeper into those. It's just part of his culture, it's part of his communication, it's part of his vocabulary. So it's interesting to see him do the same thing with nautical terms. And so there are always some reasons possibly for that. He did travel with Paul on 2 different sea journeys of ministry work, but there are also those that wonder if he might have been a doctor, like a boat doctor, a ship doctor. During his years before he came to Paul, since it comes out like so freely, the way that he levels this. But again, just for all clear, this is the Sea of Galilee that they are at and on. But it's just kind of an interesting tidbit on Luke. The other thing it's fun, not fun, but kind of good to know, especially as we get into these next verses, is about this part about washing their nets. That's the crap job that pretty much nobody liked doing. That's the job that happens at the end when you're tired and you're bored. I mean, like yesterday we moved Dad. I remember first load we were all in, second load, kind of pushing yourself a little bit. Third load, you're like, oh come on, like just like you're just losing energy and whatnot. I also kind of put it to I don't know how you guys do, but we for ministry also vacation with my son living down in Florida. We travel a little bit, and packing doesn't bother me at all. I like packing. Monica doesn't. That's just because you're traveling back and forth between here and Illinois or Indiana right now. But I like packing. Packing, it's, hey, what we're going to do, we're going to need this. I always take swimming trunks, never swim. And then you go and you use the stuff, and then I hate unpacking. Am I the only one who hates unpacking more than packing? At least with me on that. It's in our house, and you think it wouldn't be that big of a deal because most of the dirty clothes are now in a bag. So half the clothes that you pack, you just dump in and you start doing the washing, which is another thing. washing. I don't mind starting the washing. I don't mind listening to it, putting the clothes away that drives me nuts. But in our house, then it takes about 2 to 3 weeks to get that last 4 or 5 items out of that suitcase. And then that suitcase gets zipped up, and every single one of the suitcases goes to the very, if you've been to a house, the very top of the basement stairs. And stop. Until Dad takes them down. You might remember, I remember when Everybody Loves Raymond had an entire show about who's going to take that suitcase upstairs. You remember that? I don't even fight it at home. I don't even fight at home. Emily's not going to take it downstairs. Jenny, she can be mad at me when I get home. Can be mad at me. But we hate unpacking. This is the unpacking for fishermen. It's just you have to clean all the nets. You've got to do it every day to be ready for the night. So you got to keep in mind that this is kind of a grudgery type moment for Simon and the boys as we go into this. But outside of that, it's kind of just setting the crowd. For those who came and watched The Chosen with us, you'll remember this scene in the first season. I again, would love Chosen, but I don't think in that particular one it completely captured it because he was like talking to like 20 people on the the beach side, and he's like, "Hey, I gotta go hang out with my friends over here." Type that. He was being crowded in on, so there was a large crowd. He's back in Capernaum after the healing of Peter's mother-in-law and the many people in the village and cast out the demons. So there's a decent crowd there, and so then he helps himself to Simon's boat to start transitioning out because he's getting crowded in on. But from a God standpoint, it's going to be very interesting to see how Jesus uses a metaphor, how Jesus uses a situation to help Simon, to help Andrew, to help James, to help John transition from work to ministry. It's a pretty creative way that Jesus works here. So that's kind of the tone we're going into as we go into 4. So he's asked them to put out, and in verse 4 it says, when he finished speaking, he said to Simon, "Put out into the deep and let down your nets for a catch." And Simon answered, "Master, we toiled all night and took nothing, but at your word I will let down the nets." And when they had done this, they enclosed a large number of fish, and their nets were breaking. They signaled to the partners in the other boat to come and help them. And they came, and they filled both the boats so that it began to sink. But when Simon Peter saw it, he fell down at Jesus' knees, saying, "Depart from me, for I am a sinful man. I'm a sinful man, O Lord." For he and all who were with him were astonished at the catch of fish that they had taken, and so also were James and John, sons of Zebedee, who were partners with Simon. So this is where we start seeing that transition from the word into what's going on within Simon and within the boat. There's this weird request that for no apparent reason that anybody can think of within the crowd or within Simon's boat of Jesus saying, "Let's go fishing again," when that season is done, that time of day is done. And if you think about, again, the suitcase, he has no interest in messing up those nets again. They just got done with that. It has no interest in going out and doing it again because it's not that time of day for fish. It has no interest in going through all this work again. But since Simon has had experience with Jesus, as we've already looked, he's heard him teach, seen him heal, he's seen him cast out demons. He says, "But Master, if that's what you want, I'll do it. I'll do it." I love the fact that he's kind of like Captain Obvious at this point too. He's like, "Hey, we've been fishing all night." Like, "Yeah, duh, I didn't notice that." But he still submits, and the result is incredible. Again, the chosen aspect of things did have some biblical imagination within that, but it's interesting to think about from that standpoint, just the need that they had, the struggle that they had, and how all of a sudden they had this answer, this miraculous answer, something had never happened before, something that he'd been doing his trade for years and years and built a business on and built a company on, and all of a sudden everything was fixed in that moment. And when he just saw it, it was so supernatural that anybody educated like Simon on fishing would say this has got to be the Lord. It was not just a good catch, it was a great catch. And he responds by falling on his knees saying, "You got to leave me. I'm a sinner. You can't be in the same boat as me. You can't be in the same presence as me." And I know I've talked to a lot of people who have felt that way, that God could never forgive them, that God would never take and heal them, or whatever the case may be. This pretty much speaks right into the face of that's not true. So in this moment while he's devastated before the Lord, we see the Hess side of Jesus. We see the tenderness of Jesus there in that second half of verse 10 when Jesus said to Simon, "Don't be afraid. From now on, you will be catching men." And when they had brought their boats to land, they left everything and followed him. Again, I don't mean to keep going back to the Chosen, but there's a good chunk of us in here that have that reference. And I thought it was beautiful the other night, like the Chosen Christmas special, a lot of us went to go see that. Now, in all honesty, how many people thought it had too much special music in it? Okay. So we're not completely. Yeah. Mike, you went there. Don't play. Had some beautiful music in it. I got to tell you, like I saw several of us talking about the song "Gratitude" from I think Bethel, the guy, I don't forget the guy's name, and I loved. What was that one? It's the hymn. How great they are. Thank you very much. Love that. Love me. But there's so many. And there was one, I looked at Glenn because Glenn was sitting beside me. He lost the bet. And there's one like Cain. I think they have like one popular, really big song with that. For some reason they were kind of creeping me out a little bit. But they're playing and the bass player's like, dun, dun, like she's just going off and like what you're hearing is dum, 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 dum. And it's like, he plays bass like I was looking at you to be like, come on. They should have just left it. Anyways, I'm off track. But here was beautiful. I did love the episode. Loved many of the songs. And in the episode, they really portrayed Joseph and Mary well when it comes to this do not be afraid. There were several times when they're going through not being able to find any place, that she's pregnant, all the struggles that they're going through, that he kept coming back to that. And like when she was struggling, he's like, when your messenger came, what was the first thing he said? Do not be afraid. When the messengers came, they said different things, but one thing was the same. Do not be afraid. They kept coming back to this phrase to get them through that time, and I'm sure Simon did the same as well. And I think we could get a lot better at it in our own lives. Do not be afraid. From now on, you'll be catching men. You'll have a new purpose, a new vision. And when they brought their boats to land, they left and followed him. Left everything, followed him. Okay, so here's one of the things that's we kind of have to watch for in our biblical imagination. If you look at this, there's a temptation, at least for me, if you're desiring more of Jesus, going, Luke, why didn't you tell us what he was preaching? You know, like I'm curious what the crowd was there for. I'm curious what the crowd heard. I'm curious what those things came into play. But one of the things that's interesting is that's just not the point of this testimony. Again, it's not a documentary where he's trying to get everything. He's got testimonies here. He's got witnesses that he's talked to. He's bringing out the facts that bring a difference into our lives. And so then we have to kind of start studying this. Okay, what are the points? What are the possible points that could come from this particular section? Because, again, the sermon was for them, it wasn't for us. So as I went through that, I started playing with some points, and Chris will put these up on the screen. There's multiple possible points that could be in this particular section for you. I don't think they're going to be for everybody in this moment of time. Maybe different ones, like as we go through them, the Spirit will say, well, that's for you. Maybe we consider this or whatnot. But there's multiple different points that we can look at. The first one is moving into your boat. Moving into a boat, what I'm talking about is you might be a person who has come and listened to me preach 1 billion times. You might be a brand new fresh here, but you've gone to church your entire life, heard 1 billion sermons. You've done 1 billion Bible studies. You picked up some tidbits here, tidbits there. But you've never let Jesus move from the seashore of that sermon into your boat where it's personal and intimate. And that might be something that you need to consider. Maybe you've said the prayer to accept Jesus as leader and forgiver in your life, but you never let Jesus, from the outside of saying a little prayer, hoping that you'll go to, I just want to be able to go to heaven, and into your boat where it invades your life, where there's an intimacy, where there's experiences like what we see with Jesus and Simon here. So there's definitely a point here that we need to let Jesus be a personal, intimate moving forward, not just by accepting him as leader and forgiver in our lives, but by living him as leader and forgiver in our lives. So that might be something that might be standing out to you today. Next one, following authority. Again, Simon had seen Jesus on the move. He knew enough, not necessarily to be all in yet, like we see here at the end, but he knew enough that if the master says, hey, why don't you do this, that he'll say, I don't want to, but I will. Fine. And the thing that's crazy is he was reluctant to be able to have the best catch he ever saw, or ever heard of. The most beautiful blessing was right in front of him with the Lord. He was reluctant to do it because it was going to take a little effort, a little bit of sacrifice, a little bit of work. And I was thinking about that, and I was like, man, there's so many people that haven't accepted Jesus, but he's offering them blank slate. Love, grace, Hess, mercy, upon mercy, right here. Here's a purpose. Here's your plan. Here's what we're going to go forward to. And people are like, well, it's all about that following that authority and that submission. And then we accept Jesus as leader and forgive our lives and act like we don't. And we read the promises of God, and he's saying, look, this is what we've got. This is what I'm going to do. I've got you covered. And we're like, but I failed before. But I'm still licking my wounds. It might be that God is saying through this particular testimony to you, if nothing else, use that reluctant, hesitant faith to take a step and watch what I do with it. Just watch what I do with it. That might be something that might be in somebody's life. It might be finding our proper place before the Lord, as he did. I mean, our proper place is to be on our knees in front of him, saying, I'm a sinner, and I can't handle you. That is our proper place. That is where the humility comes into place. Because we'll put James 4 up there. This is a verse that everybody should have written, that you see it a billion times a day. It's such a beautiful truth. Humble yourself for the Lord, and he will exalt you. If you spend a lot of time trying to fix things and get ahead at work, or get popular at school, or if you're just going and going and going and trying to get your kids to be straight A students and like the most popular kid in the class and all that kind of stuff, just stop it. And just humble yourself before the Lord. Just humble yourself before the Lord. He'll lift you up. Simon Peter's true life started in this moment when he fell on his knees. And the same happens with us, whether it be the first time or the second time or the billionth time over. And then with if we'll go back to the list. Thank you, Chris. That leads us into submission. And I love this particular story for the sake of submission, of following him. We hear a lot of testimonies, and they're beautiful testimonies, they're true testimonies, they're encouraging testimonies. But if people getting down and like their life just fell apart and they're down in the muck and mire, and then so they turn their life over to Jesus, we hear those are great. My hope is that people stay on it, because one of the things that I see way too much is somebody's relationship falls apart and they come to Jesus until they get a new relationship and they don't feel that need anymore, so they walk away. Or they're going through a physical challenge and they come to Jesus and they get better and they don't need him anymore and they walk away. There's multiple situations like that we come to him when there's a void, but when there's a temporary worldly fix, we just walk away from him again. So we have to stick with this. But the thing that's beautiful about this submission here is Paul is not at the bottom of the bill, he's at the top. In this moment, he just got a catch that fixed every single problem in his life, and that he could probably buy a couple more boats pretty easily. And he's got quite a reputation going now to go with his business. And when Jesus said, follow me, he left. Just left. At the very top of the game. We need to stop coming to Jesus just when we need him, because we need him all the time. So that might be something for somebody. I think go is a fabulous one within this. Again, they left all of it to move forward and go and just kind of embrace that vision. That's that third step we talked about last week. The world talking people and getting their advice and getting our thoughts, and then stepping off and talking to Jesus and getting a better feel for things. And the third one is to put it in action, to announce that vision and move forward. That's where he's at this point. Some of us just need to decide we're going to go. Way too many stagnant Christians in this world today. Way too many stagnant. We have a mission, we have a purpose. You have a mission, you have a purpose. We just cannot stay at 2. And so he comes to 3, and then he moves into 4 with go, because then he's knowing that he's going to have problems. I love the fact that Jesus, when he said, I'm going to make you fisher of men, or fish, men and women, he was purposely using a term that Simon knew well. So he wasn't saying, hey, leave this hard business and come live in the gravy world of Christianity, la la land. He said, you're still going to be a fisher. You're just going to be a fisher of men. You're still going to have good seasons and bad seasons. It's just going to be with a purpose. You're still going to take and have times where you're in want and times where you have plenty, but you're going to be doing it for me. There's still going to be things that come against you. There's still going to be times that you feel like you got a big community around you. Times that you're the only one in the boat out in the middle of the storm in the Sea of Galilee, and you don't know if you're going to survive or not, but now you're going to do it for me. So he wasn't promising him some kind of paradise, but he says it's time for us to go. It's not just about you anymore. And that's something I think a lot of us have to realize, because we've become very consumeristic within the church as a whole, capital C. We've become very self-focused as a whole. What does this mean for me? What does this mean for my family? What does this mean for my house? Instead of going and doing like we're supposed to be doing. And so there's multiple points within this, but there's one that I think, why any one of these might be where you're at today. There's one that's for every single one of us, every single moment of the day, including right now. And that one, Chris, if you'll put that up, is follow me. That's the point that I think Simon, if he was staying here today, would say, this is the only thing in that story that matters the most. This is the thing that you all need to answer today. We've been talking about that question coming. Today is that question. Follow me. Have a difference. And here's why I say that, is there's a parallel scripture to this in the harmony of the Gospels. And it's in Mark chapter 1. You don't have to turn there, but you might want to study it later. But it's a very simplified version of what we just read, and it doesn't have anywhere near the same amount of details that Luke included, but it's in Mark. And basically how Mark goes is like this. Jesus came to Simon and Andrew and said, follow me, and they followed him. Follow me, be fishermen, and they followed. They dropped everything, followed him. Went over to James and John and said, follow me, and they dropped everything, followed him. That's pretty much all Mark gives us. The crazy part is, Mark's gospel is whose gospel? Do you remember? It's Peter's. Mark was not there. Mark didn't write a gospel from a first-hand account. He was an assistant that traveled with Peter, and Paul at different times with Peter, wrote down his stories, wrote down his testimony, wrote down his words so they could go out to the church. It was basically dictated to Mark. So in other words, this is Simon Peter's account of what happened this day. And he doesn't share with us about the miraculous catch. That, for some reason, is gone. It's out of his mind. He doesn't share about falling on his knees in front of Jesus and saying, depart from me. That's out of his mind. The crowd's not even mentioned. None of it's mentioned except for Jesus came to me and said, follow me, and I did it. I did it. I followed him. I gave up everything and followed him. That was the invitation that was given that day that changed everything for Simon, that each and every one of us have to respond to. And for some of us, yes, again, maybe some of us in this room or watching online, whatever the case may be, have not accepted Jesus as leader and forgiver in our lives. We've not acknowledged with our mouth that he is the Son of God. We did not believe that he died and rose again, but now we know it, this case, and you can have a little talk with Jesus. He's saying, follow me. I'll change your life, not just for your sake, but for the sake of people around you, because you've got a mission to do. You've got a purpose. You should have a passion. It would be my passion I give to you through the Holy Spirit. Right? So that invitation is right there. Just like they were in the boat, and Jesus is right there saying, I'm trying to get a little bit invasive and help myself into your boat and say, follow me. And you have the opportunity today to follow him. But all of us have that invitation today because Simon Peter already knew Jesus. And if you know Jesus, you have that opportunity today to stop saying, okay, this 70% of my life is yours, this 30% is mine. This 90% is yours, this 10% is mine. Because I'm talking to you as a guy in my early 20s. I had a 90-10 life, and that's when I was arrested, and that's when I lost everything, and that's when all my friends walked out on me. That's when my girlfriend dumped my butt. That's when everything fell apart. Because my God says, I love you too much for you to be under the control of that 10%. And when he lays you out of love, here's the thing. It doesn't just hurt you. It will hurt your spouse. It will hurt your kids. It will hurt your parents. It will hurt your friends. It will hurt your ministry. It hurts everybody within your circle once the hypocrisy is called out. If it's 99 and 1%, please submit and follow him. Because when you submit and you humble yourself before him, he'll lift you up. Otherwise, you're just dying to be a Saul on the road to Damascus to be laid out. He has so much more for us. And what we're going to be talking about this week is what does that look, these next couple of weeks is, what that looks like. There's a great training we're going to get into next week in Mark that I'm so excited to get into with you guys. But today it's just simply about, will you truly follow him to fulfill all righteousness? Are you ready for that? This is that moment to decide. And it's not... Like the last few weeks, I don't know, last several months, many people share my view that there's been a lot of momentum within the Holy Spirit moving within our church and within our efforts within the community. And we've had a lot of our service times end on a very spirit-moving, emotional feeling type level of things, and I love those moments. But I do think we need to be reminded sometimes the Holy Spirit is not just about feelings. He's so much more than that. And so today, I believe that we're in a moment kind of like that campfire story I told you guys about, about a month or so ago at Judson Hills, where we used to have the emotional last night campfires, and it was dark, and everybody's sharing testimonies, and everybody's crying and stuff. I thought you loved Jesus. I know what you're saying. But then that we purposely would bring them back the last morning after that time and just say, okay, here in the daylight, no campfire going, no songs, no kumbaya. This is the same place. This is the same God. What is your decision for Jesus? It feels like that morning to me this week. It's not about the Spirit giving us emotional moments today. It's about you having an opportunity to make a logical decision for the truth, a logical decision for your calling in this life, an honest evaluation, please, not just because we talk about this stuff a lot, but an honest evaluation of where am I when it comes to following Him? Am I being a fisher of men and women? Am I leaving everything for Jesus? So if not, you're not just shooting Him out, you're shooting yourself out.